Good evening and welcome to An Evening With. I'm Tim from Retro Gaming Revival and I'm joined by Blunners. Hello.
Hello, you all right, everyone?
Yeah, all good, thank you. And this evening we are having an evening with the creators of Skera VR. We had a conversation about the pronunciation earlier. So Skera VR, which is a new VR game, which is yet to be released. Hang on, I'm getting an echo on my headset. There we go, that's better. So yeah, thank you, Max and Horace, for joining us. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks again for having us on.
Well, thanks for coming on, and we will get on to talking about Skera VR soon throughout the show. But we'll start off just getting to know you guys a little bit and knowing what your early gaming memories are, and what first got you into gaming. So we'll go from this side. So Max, if you want to go first, what were your early gaming memories and first sort of consoles that you played on?
So a lot of the games that I played were sort of ones that my brother played before me. So when he got a Game Boy, when he moved on to the next console, I got the Game Boy to play on. When he got the GameCube, I got the N64 to play on, and so on and so forth. And yeah, I basically played as much as I could get my hands on at the time. I think the Xbox 360 was the only console that I got that was like my console, that was like bought for my birthday. And so, you know, playing the ever-loving hell out of Halo. I didn't have a lot of games at the time, so I would sort of like play reruns of Halo and play a lot of the multiplayer on that. But yeah, pretty much any console that was around during my childhood, I got to play on a bit. So yeah.
Xbox 360, I think they recently closed the store, haven't they, for Xbox 360?
Yeah, they have.
Yeah, they recently closed it. I think there's been a bit of a surge of people saying grab these games now before they're gone because they were closing
so
down.
I've still got a bucket of all of the CDs for every game that I'd owned. So it's the hard copies are coming in handy now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Underneath your TV. All your stuff still kind of underneath your desk over there because last time I came around they were.
So that's like half of it. I've got the other half under my bed.
What sort of games are you playing on the Game Boy? Like you said, your first Game Boy.
So it was mostly the Pokemon games. So it was Pokemon Blue, Pokemon Crystal, and then there were a couple of like of the odd ones. And I'm not sure which ones were like Game Boy Advanced versions, but I know there was like a Star Wars one that was based around Phantom Menace. There was like one of the like really old Grand Theft Auto games on there.
Yeah, top down ones.
You've got like the classic Tetris and stuff. But yeah,
can't go wrong with Pokemon, especially Pokemon Blue. Then that first entry into Pokemon is basically why it's still going today because it was phenomenal at the time. I was Pokemon Red because obviously I'm in Southampton, so I can't go Blue because Portsmouth. But yeah, I had to go Pokemon Red. But yeah, what
I can't remember which one I had. I think I had Red. I had Red. But I eventually got the other one. I think I've got Red, Blue, and Yellow now. But at the time, I just had the one. I think it was Pokemon Red that I got. Was there a Pokemon Green as well? Did they eventually get a green release?
There was a leaf
green. Was basically the Japanese version, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I remember down the road here, they done a bit where you turned up with your game cart and they put Mew on it. So I remember the queue was around the block. It was like literally like for miles because back then there was no DLC.
No, you had to do it.
I think I can
I can't remember the thing with that, but you had to have collected all the other. You had to have all 150 on your cartridge to get Mew. But I think there's a few which you'd have to play through the games multiple times, wouldn't you? Because you have to get the ones we get the fossil. You could either get Armonite or Aerodactyl. You can't get both. And then there's the different evolutions as well. You'd have to play multiple times to get different EVs. And then you could either get Hitmonlee or Hitmonchan. And then a few regional ones are on different versions of the game. So you have to trade. And then I think one of them, I can't remember his name now, Geodude only evolved into Graveler if you traded him.
If you traded
like that. So it wasn't easy to get all of them. You had to so much faff to get that.
But once Yellow came out, that had them all anyway. And then you got gifted like Charmander and Bulbasaur and all them. You basically started with Pikachu, and then you got gifted all the others. So yeah, so what a game, and what a clever way of making money though. Until
yes, As marketing plot, isn't it? Yeah. So I suppose in a way, like you got, if you were getting the hand-me-downs, I suppose you're a generation behind a lot of the time. But then I guess not spending your pocket money on your games so much. So
yeah, so I think it's the thing of if I had been playing what was like the newest console when I was around, I would have missed everything that came before. And so I'm one of the like last generation that physically played on like a Game Boy Color. And like I think we still have the N64 somewhere. And I think like me and my brother would play Super Smash Brothers Melee on the the GameCube.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, like so much of my childhood was based on playing those games that you could just like sort of replay a lot. We didn't have a lot of you know, money to throw around at like extra consoles and things. So like it was one of the things of anything that we could play together was a really good one. The pod racing for the N64, I think I played that like 100,000 times.
I think it's weird now, isn't it? Because you've got so much choice now with things like, you know, Steam and Xbox Game Pass and PlayStation Plus and all that sort of stuff, that you can just get access to so many games so easily now. Whereas, you know, back then you would get a game for like your birthday, maybe Christmas, and then you might have enough for one more game. So at most, I think most people would get like maybe 3 games in a year. So if you got a game, you made sure you got your most of your time out of it, because you wouldn't be getting another game for quite a while. Whereas now, if you play a game on Game Pass, you're like, oh, I'm not really feeling this, you just jump onto another one. So
yeah, I mean, everyone I spoke to, it seems now like everyone just has like a backlog of games that like, oh, I wanted to play this like 2 years ago. So I've got like a you know, list of things I'm trying. It's just not enough time. There's so many coming out, and there's like so many ones you want to try. But
and it's a weird problem to have, isn't it? The games are coming out faster than we can play them.
Yeah,
that's it's
getting old, man. You haven't got all this time to play anymore.
Well, I've the ones you go back to all the time. You know, ones that you just like, oh, I love playing through this. I've not played it for 2 years. I kind of want to go back and just like, you know, be nostalgic and play through it again.
I think that problem I had as well was not so much an older console, so I kept my Mega Drive and PS1 stuff, but PlayStation 2 was an era where I traded a lot in, because Game would have these deals of like, oh, if you trade in 4 games, any 4 games, you'll get the latest game for like £1 or something. And that was the only way I could afford to get new games. But I mean, I traded in all these PS2 games, and I never thought, oh, you know what, in 20 years, I'll want to play that again. Because you just don't think that at the time, do you? You think, oh, yeah, I've finished that.
Worth a ton.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it'd be worth a ton of money in like 20, 30 years. So you trade it in, and then you regret it. But yeah, it's there's definitely still a lot to be said for, like, again, as you mentioned earlier, having physical discs of stuff, because a lot of the online stores tend to close down, don't they? And we've recently lost the Xbox One. So how about yourself, Horace? What was your first sort of console you got, and what were your early games?
I've realized that I'm kind of surrounded here. I've got 3 kind of Pokemon lovers, and Pokemon was never a thing for me kind of growing up. So for me, it was a lot of like RTS strategy games. Like I would sit on my dad's lap and he would play like Age of Empires or like Dawn of War, like Age of Mythology. And it was kind of, as a group, we were PlayStation house. We did have an Xbox where like I played Oblivion, and like I think I got like the orange box thing where I remember Christmas randomly where it got like, it was like 2 Oblivion, and then it was the same time I kind of got like Left 4 Dead. But I was very much like a PlayStation kid. Like Shadow of the Colossus, a lot of like Ratchet and Clank games growing up as well. And then like Max as well, I went for my Xbox phase, and then it was like, because I'm from a big family, so it's loads of siblings, so we played like ever loving hell out of Halo. Especially with the neighbors as well. They were all kind of similar age to us, all the kids there. So like we would just come around each other's house and just play Halo pretty much like every weekend, all the time. But it was very much kind of RTS games. And obviously then, now it's just everything. And I still occasionally go back to like Dawn of War when I'm feeling a little bit nostalgic, or go back to like the Fallout games, because I played them a lot. It was like it's a very Christmas thing for me for some reason, playing the Fallout games. I think maybe because like it's what I would get for Christmas when I was younger. So like it was like, oh, Christmas comes around, oh, I want to play Fallout New Vegas, because that's what I did when I was a kid. Even went back through Skyrim like 4 months ago. I just picked Skyrim up again, and I was like, oh, you know what, I've not ran around in here for a while. I kind of fancy doing it.
It is a good one to come in. Speaking of Skyrim, you know, as we're going to be talking about VR quite a bit, is have you played Skyrim VR?
No, I've not.
No,
I've not.
I have a little bit. Funnily enough, I've always been a big like modder of like Elder Scrolls games, so I tried the like default Skyrim VR, and I think the immortal traveler there might be my brother.
Okay, not your mum then, as Andy thinks it was.
And Mirta is my brother's partner.
Brilliant. All popping on.
So I went into Skyrim VR, and I found that it was quite, I guess, truncated. So my first thing was, can I mod it to be a little bit, a bit more interesting? And I found a lot more than I expected for that. So you can sort of mod to have like a full body rig for it, because it's one of the things with Skyrim, right? Like you have your character and you outfit your character. And then when you get into VR, you can't see yourself because now you're a floating pair of hands. So it sort of built a disconnect out of that, and I wanted to get some of that back. And also trying like different equipment holds and things like that. I think using magic in Skyrim VR was a very interesting sort of thing, because I hadn't played a lot of games that explored that with VR at the time.
It definitely makes a big difference if how you like pick up and hold items, because you don't want to be like dropping stuff on the floor and then struggling to scramble to pick it up, especially when there's like an enemy coming towards you. And what I found with Skyrim VR when I first played that was I tried playing with the move controllers, and I really liked being able to like a bow and arrow and like pull the controller back and shoot an arrow and like or swing a sword. That was all fine. But as soon as I went to the menu, it was like, oh, I've got to select my menu items and choose this. I was like, no, I can't do that. I'm going to play with the normal controller. And as soon as I tried with the normal controller, I never went back to the move controllers with Skyrim. So I was like, playing it was fine, but like moving around and using the menus was just such a faff. Like, no, I want to have the controller. But it still worked really well in VR with a controller.
Yeah, I think
it's
it's
like exploring the woods and stuff and going hunting and all that sort of thing in VR was just a great experience.
Yeah, it's hard to. It's as we've been learning. It's hard to kind of get UI stuff integrated into VR naturally. Just one of those things. It's we're going through. We're getting there. We're feeling pretty good about it. But I can appreciate that, especially in Skyrim as well, when it's like, especially if you're not too good at VR, we get like it's very like shaky with the VR controller.
So I think it's like
you're in and out of the menus a lot as well, didn't you? And,
yeah.
Sorry, go on.
So like with VR, it's like precise control and trying to manage lots of items. Like in a game like Skyrim, you'll have a dragon's hoard's worth of equipment by some point, and trying to like get all of that into a chest, or like trying to sell off everything without selling the wrong thing. It's annoying enough in Skyrim normally. So when you add VR on top of that, it just becomes even more of an issue, and it sort of acts as like a barrier between the fun parts of playing it.
No, yeah, definitely.
There was anyone else first time you go up to that dragon, just absolutely crap yourself and run off? You weren't strong enough to deal with it. Because that's basically what I did. I just remember it took me a while to get into Skyrim, because I'd never played any of the others. Obviously heard some really good things about
Skyrim
it.
was the first Elder Scrolls one for you?
Yeah, that was my first one.
Okay.
Because I'm like a Nintendo fanboy. Pretty much anything Nintendo, I've got it. And it's yeah, and I literally, as soon as that Dragonland, I'll just crap myself and just run away. And I was just running away from it because I wasn't strong enough. And by the end of it, you're so strong, aren't you? That you just literally see you later, mate, with all your dragon.
You just give him a good look and he falls over.
Yeah, by the end of it. But yeah, that first time I wasn't just didn't know what I was doing.
I quite enjoyed. You mentioned Oblivion earlier. Like I really enjoyed Oblivion. But one thing I found better in Skyrim was that when you get near the end game and you get like the randomly a dragon will show up, you can handle killing a dragon fairly quickly. Whereas in Oblivion, you'd be walking around, you'd be on your way to try and like hand in something for a fetch quest or complete a mission or do something, and then you see an Oblivion gate, and after a while it's like, oh, I can't be bothered to go in there now. I'm just going to leave it. It'll be fine. And then you have like all these Oblivion gates that were just unaddressed because it took so long to go in and clear the area out. I was like, no, I'm trying to return this book to somebody or something. I can't be bothered.
Yeah, like the first Oblivion gate that you do is like horrifying and terrible, and then like in late game, you're like, oh, another one, come on. I don't even need any of the stuff in there anymore. Can I just squish you closed and walk away?
Yeah, you think they'd have like shorter experiences at that point to just go and close it. But yeah, so going on from, I think Skyrim is probably good more recent game to segue into then for getting into the games industry yourselves. So where did you first get started, and where did it all come about?
So I think for me, the sort of decision to move towards games came from doing my A levels, and I went for like a very like sciences path. So I went for like geology, biology, a bit of product design is like a bit of a wild card. And it was one of the things that I realized is after, like, if I get a job in any of these disciplines, I'm going to use that money to go play and buy video games afterwards. Like in the end, all of my effort is probably going to be channeled back into video games. So it might be worth looking at that as a pursuit to go with, if that's where my passion was really lying. One of my friends from secondary school decided to go from that from the start. He knew what he was doing way further than me. And so I looked at what universities were around, what university he went to. I was a year sort of behind that. And then that led me to going to the University for the Creative Arts in Farnham, because it was the one that had the most broad range of sort of teaching for like games related skills. So you've got a bit of like 2D concept work, a bit of like programming, a bit of like 3D art and stuff like that. And all I really knew is I want to be able to make something basically from top to bottom. And so that seemed like the best place for me to get those skills. And yeah, 3 years later, my third year project was the very truncated version of Skera VR. And for that, it was at first basically a technical demo of like, here's some cool stuff I want to show off.
Mm-hmm.
And then sort of realizing that it was a very shallow idea. I didn't have any of the design sort of premise for it, any of the thought behind the game. And I realized that it wasn't really something I was that interested in. So I took it and sort of looked at how I could make it into something I was interested in, drawing a lot of those references from early childhood games and sort of bringing that into it. And after doing that, we went on to the incubator program that the university runs, which basically helps to provide for your game. You get some of the software given for it. You get a bit of teaching time that gives you a bit of money to sort of keep you going. And on that incubator program is where I met Horace. And that's basically the start of the whole like development process for Skera.
So we've got a question in the chat, which I was going to come back to later. We kind of covered on it a bit there, which was, do you have a backlog of games, or is this your first? So you mentioned this being a university project. So is this your first game you guys have actually sort of done professionally?
Yeah, so this is the first game that we've got as a, like, we're sort of trying to make it commercially viable, I guess. There are games that obviously like I'll have worked on in university that were like, I have to hand this in for an assignment, or here's a mechanic that I think I can make. How can I make enough of a game to make that work? We've also done quite a few game jams, some of which I've done with other people. Most of them I've done with the team that we're working on Skera. But as said, for game jams, we're not really focused on making that like a marketable kind of product. We're just going, what is a cool, fun thing to work on?
Nice little kind of hiatuses from Skera, like take a kind of a week off and just, completely step into something new. And they've been quite fun and wacky.
So what is the size of your team then? So how many people are working on Skera at the moment?
3 people.
3 people.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm going to show you the trailer a bit, and people see that's impressive. You've got such a small team working on something that looks, really professional, looks really well polished. I did have a chance to play it at WASD. I don't know how well I did. I think I managed to solve a few puzzles and stuff. But
well, then you did well. You did well. Then.
Yeah, I think it was funny because I had Ollie with me, not this Ollie, the other Ollie that is with us. We both went, and so I obviously had the headset on and the earphones on, so I couldn't hear people around me. And but he was like there watching, and then the people there sort of showcasing it, presumably from your team, were saying like, "Oh, he's done that. No one else has done that yet." Things like, it's like, "Oh, he's doing it wrong." It's like he's not meant to do that, but No one else has tried doing that yet. So he's on to something. I was like trying to put the balls in the different holes and figure out what you're supposed to do. But no, I do like the. I've always been a big fan of like escape rooms and things like that as well. And I think VR games cater to that really nicely as well. Like I really like the Room VR if you've played that before, and things like that, because you get that escape room sort of experience. But in that, it works really well in the VR space, if you know what I mean, because you're sort of exploring the environment a lot and interacting with objects. And that sort of thing. So I suppose I'll just spend time with you, Horace, on the same subject of getting into the industry. I presume you're sort of on a similar.
As you can
path.
imagine, the second half is very much the same. You know, driving at university, but like I kind of always loved music. Didn't really know like when I was younger because didn't have like a particularly musical family. And like I mean, everyone listens to music and all that sort of stuff as well. So I was kind of like it was a kind of a niche thing that I was trying to treading water in, not quite knowing what to do. But always loved films, always loved games, and for whatever reason, the coin kind of never dropped until I was about 16. I was like, oh wait, it's actually a job. Someone does like writes the music for these games. I had no idea why before, despite the fact loving the music in the games, it just had never like connected that someone was doing that, and that's like a career someone can make. And so then pretty much from that point onwards, I knew what I wanted to do. So like it's I always wanted to do writing music and kind of composing music for media in general, like stories. So I want to do films and all that sort of stuff as well. But like films and games, they're like two very kind of different beasts when it comes to tackling with music. Like I love like linear music, like writing to stories, writing to a scene, and you can do that in games, obviously to some point, cinematics, and stuff like that. But I really like kind of designing interactive sound and music games as well, like how that's going to change on the fly depending on what people are doing. And there's some like really cool creative things you can do there to kind of like orchestrate the music as someone is playing it, which I think is a really cool idea. And so kind of got into university, same one as Max, and I spent kind of my 3 years there working on those different projects, not a lot of games, and I kind of spent my last third year badgering and sending emails to the games department going, hi, I really want to do some music for some games. And that was pretty much consistent for about 6 months, me emailing all the time. And then, I was put in front of Max, and I remember Anastasia. Max sent me over like a little kind of early pre-published thing with the VR, which like kind of amazed me immediately. And I sent off kind of the best music I could to try and show off as well. And then, from there, pretty much we met, we talked a little bit about what I felt like the music and sound for Skera would be like, with a few references. And since then it's just sort of we just fell together quite naturally, quite quickly. It's been a great team since then.
And what so on music and games and stuff, what would you say your favorite soundtracks are from games?
Games okay. Well, it kind of ties in with my favorite game. I'm a massive Austin Wintory fan, so he did Journey, which I think most people would know. He did like Absu. He did one of the Assassin's Creed games. He did Assassin's Creed Syndicate, the one set in like London. He did like Heartless. He did like this RTS game with about rats. I'm trying to remember the name of it. But loads of things. I forgot the name of the composer. He did like Plague's Tale, which absolutely loves. He's a really really big person on like interactive music, really interactive music down to like such minute points that sometimes you wouldn't realize. Supergiant Games, Darren Korb, who kind of did like Hades, Transistor, Bastion, all that sort of stuff. But I'm like by trade kind of like an orchestral composer, so I kind of like my like classical instruments and stuff like that. But I do like a fair bit of sound design, so like twisting and kind of doing a bit of sound production stuff to make things sound a little bit weird, which I do enjoy quite a lot. But yeah, Austin Wintory definitely is probably my number one.
Nice. Okay. Cool. So we'll move on to talk about the game work at the moment, so Skera VR. And I'll show up a quick trailer. So let's see if I can get this right this time, because I sometimes mess this up and share the wrong screen and do all sorts of weird things. I want to make sure I have audio. Okay, so let's bring up and watch the trailer for this. Let's go back to the beginning. There we go.
What a nostalgic hit that is.
There we go. So cool. So you've got on the obviously you can add to wish list on Steam now. Is it available on any other platforms? Is it just going to be available on Steam?
So it will likely be on any free platform we can get it on, pretty much. But Steam is what we're focusing on for the time being. What we have on Steam right now is basically from the sort of EGX time period and that was like EGX 2022, I think.
Yeah.
So we've been in like full steam, sort of like trying to improve everything, and so we'll be updating that Steam page, going with our demo that will be released hopefully within the next few months.
Okay.
And that'll give us our like real view into like our like initial release, what the interest is like, and then also starting to talk to other platforms, because we'll have then a really solid view of what we're dealing with. It's one of the things when you talk to publishers or distributors to say like, this is the idea that I have, but I don't have a store page anywhere that shows you actually what I'm producing. So we kind of want to focus on making sure that's perfect, and then we can mirror that onto other platforms like the Oculus Store and things like that.
There we go. There's Anastasia sneaking on.
So trying to show update graphics from maybe Twitter. So I could jump onto your Twitter quickly and just show you that. Let's bring up on.
They'll have a much better view of our recent work for it.
Yeah, because that trailer's the like I said, 2022 one. We didn't like even have a roof on the level layout then, so it's kind of like the old Unity skybox.
Yep, and also the cage that has the sword in is basically just 2 tables that have been shrunk down. So there was a lot of I guess bodging to get that to work, because during that time period we were working with Transfuser, which is a like UK Game Fund grant thing that basically for getting everything done, you need your like trailer and everything done for EGX like a couple of months in advance. So that was me like screaming out the updates to try and get something that looked both good and also worked properly for that. And obviously now that we've had much more time to refine everything that we've been working on, the visuals look like related, but there's so much more going on.
And I don't know if you've got the login for Twitter. I've just gone to get on X, as it is now called. I'm not logged in, so if you could sign in on the Argyle Twitter and then share your screen, we can bring some of that.
Yeah, I've looked now.
I'm not in at the moment. I suppose we kind of covered that, but one of the questions that Andy brought up as well was, will it be compatible with PSVR or Oculus Quest 2? But if it's on Steam, you can get that on Oculus Quest 2.
Yeah, so
and we mentioned earlier like the PSVR 2 adapter for Steam. So I suppose if it's on Steam as a platform, it would be available on multiple headsets.
Yeah, so for like compatibility, we're using OpenXR, which is the plugin for Unity, and that basically means that if a headset has roughly a similar design to any other headset, it'll be compatible. If it's based on like standalone VR versus like PC or like console VR, standalone is its own sort of has its own kind of issues to deal with. Basically, you have like hard caps on like how much you can have going on. You can't like procedurally generate meshes, which for one of the main features of being able to slice and cut apart objects is kind of a nail in the coffin for that for us. It's not impossible by any means, but it requires a lot of very specialized work, which means that it's just not on our priority for standalone right now. But yeah, for Quest 2, plugging it into a laptop, we've been running it off of a laptop on our exhibitions for quite a while. So it's definitely very doable.
Oh, you got the pipes and the new pistons up. Look at that. Yeah.
So there's one specific image that shows a bit more of the updated like room styles that were
Yeah,
going for.
there it is. Yeah, the new AI room.
I see what you mean. The difference there is quite notable, isn't it, from the cream?
Yeah, and so sort of going from like the rooms in that trailer to like this room in the trailer, I was basically making fancy boxes, so they're all very square but just differently sized squares. Whereas with that picture, basically I've figured out a better method of designing levels where I'm able to use basically Fusion 360, which is a CAD software where you can draw out designs and have it be like the size of the level that you want it to be. And then you can import in those like drawing files into our 3D modeling software. And then I can bend and deform assets that I've pre-made before to be able to build out these huge environments much, much quicker. So, for example, that huge room only took like a day or two to make, and that's like a day or two of like 4 or 5 hours per day. So sort of setting up all of the like really boring stuff in the background so that when we get to production we can really start producing stuff really quickly.
Our new fancy kind of weight puzzles as well.
Yeah, I think the weight puzzles and also like the changing the way you hold the sword, was it?
The different forms. Yeah, it's the idea of like as
you
you progress through the game, you'll unlock different versions of the sword that like you would change on the fly for like different. So at the moment, like in the demo we've got 2 forms which are called like the slicer and the defender. So like the slicer is kind of a single-sided blade which you use for like cutting through meshes and projectiles, and then the defender you press a button and it kind of unfolds out into the 2-sided one. You can use that to cut through projectiles to absorb them to overcharge the sword so that your sword.
Yes, I think that was a bit I got stuck on. I had to get given a hint to do that because I think I'd got the different sword type and I was trying to destroy something with the sword in the other form, but I had to absorb the projectiles first and then do that. So I think I kind of got a bit ahead of myself and was going on to the next bit. So it's but it's good. It makes you think, doesn't it? It makes you you don't want people to like whiz through it easily, but also you don't want people to get stuck. So I think when you're coming up with puzzles and stuff, it's quite hard to find that balance of it's got to be difficult enough to be interesting, but not too difficult that it's frustrating. So I suppose you just got to keep play testing it and trying it. I think the difficulty as well is when you design the puzzle, it's obvious to you because you've done it and you know what you need to do. And then you get someone else to have a look at it. It's like, are they going to get it immediately or are they going to get really stumped? So
there's me getting stuck in one of the puzzle rooms. It's 10 across. This is usually me playtesting. I'll just send videos to Max at like 2 a.m. for him to wake up into the morning and be greeted with me going, "Oh yeah, this has got to be fixed."
Yeah, it just looks amazing. Just look at it. Just look at the aesthetics
and the other thing as well, when I'm watching is it's the same with any VR game. Is watching a video of VR footage doesn't really do it justice.
It's not good.
You have to be in the game to experience it. I think the thing that really taught me that was when I first played Super Hot. If you played Super Hot VR, when I first got VR, I just googled top best-selling or most popular VR games and stuff to get some recommendations, and quite a few lists. Super Hot VR came up. And I looked at it, I was like, well, that doesn't look very good. It's like little polygons and looks really unfinished. I just wasn't interested. It was like, but it appeared in enough like top 10 lists when I was doing some checks and stuff. I was like, okay, enough people are talking about this. I've got to give it a go. And I played it. It's like, okay, this game is really fun to play. And watching a video of it on YouTube just didn't sell me. But then actually experiencing it and having the movement-based, features they have in there was really cool to play.
It is the thing that's hard to really fully appreciate until, like you say, you put the headset on for that first time. Which is like we've had people come and obviously not so steady with the VR, or they're not too anxious, and some people get a little bit embarrassed about doing VR in public as well. The amount of people who put the VR headset on and then like immediately they're just like, oh wow, because it's honestly you put it on half the time, it's like how quickly something the space around you just disappears and you're somewhere.
It's weird because I really love playing VR games. I'm quite fortunate I don't really get any motion sickness and I can play for long periods of time. I don't typically get a lot of days off where I can just game, but normally for my birthday I'll have a day off work while my kids are at school. And I'm like, no, I'm going to spend all day playing games. Nice. A few times I've been like, right, I'm going to play a VR game and I'm just going to play it all day, and I'm fine with it. But I know some people that have gone to play VR and they're like, nope, and they just take the headset off and they're like, no, I can't do it.
So
I think
funnily
You've
enough,
got to like
I
wean
was
yourself
one
up.
of the
You've got to
people
wean
that-
yourself
Yeah.
into it.
You got to do some. One thing I found as well, some people find
I
it.
get a bit sick sometimes.
If you're the thing I found helped me starting games is if you're playing a game where you're in a cockpit or like in a robot or something, it makes sense that you're sat down moving in something.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you're a person just walking around, you don't have that bob of walking, and it kind of your eyes are telling you you're moving, but your ears are telling you you're staying still, and it makes you feel a bit nauseous.
Well,
But
it's like car sickness, isn't it? That's it.
Yeah,
It's that same thing of your brain and stomach, and you know the fluid in your ears going, wait, something's not quite right here.
Yeah, but it's a shame for anyone that has that, because VR is such a fun experience, and there's so many good VR games available that are.
It's the things where you can build up. We've tried to explain to people, especially like new people, because like we love it when we've like showed the game off to people, and they're like, you know, I'm not really done VR before, but I would want to do VR if this game, you know, when this game's out, and that's like really nice to hear. And the thing we tried to say to people is like, yeah, if you get the nausea, that happens. It's quite common, but you can build up the tolerance to it. And obviously, one of the big things we've done pretty much from the beginning is like the accessibility for like people being able to control how they move around. So like some people want slide movement, some people want to be able to teleport, you know, both. If you want like snap rotation or smooth turn, you can have that. You can change the speed at which the smooth, you turn. You can change the degree of your snap rotation as well. Because the idea is like, if you make it as comfortable as possible, someone give them the ability to like set it up to be as comfortable as possible for them, then that's like the first hurdle for them to get over. And then
it's weird because actually when you get into games, Sorry, say again.
There's a bit of level design that goes into sort of making an experience that is comfortable for people. I find that if your first experience into VR is being inside and having to climb up a stairs, like a flight of stairs, it'll basically set off everyone. Because one, being inside suddenly becomes weirdly claustrophobic in VR sometimes, and change in like elevation going up and down really sets off the nausea, especially for me. So with Skera, like it's kind of designed for people who are slightly bigger than you. So it gives it this area of like it's large and you've got lots of room to breathe. And you're taking it at your own pace and you don't have a lot of like changes in elevation going on. So it's sort of designed to be somewhat more comfortable as an environment. So we've got like give you as much ability to be comfortable with the way you move as you can, and then designing the environment to be both interesting, but also not like, you know, pressing you down into a box kind of feeling.
And a lot of VR games will have like a comfort, scores, if you will. Like there's like how comfortable it is to play. And a lot of it's this experience is like, I can't remember the different ratings on now, but I've seen some before. It was like, it's mild movement or it's extreme sort of thing. Okay. So I think the one for me, the most extreme one, is a great game, but would probably make a lot of people feel sick, was Doom VR on the PlayStation with the aim controller, because it was the teleporting. It was really fast. There's stuff everywhere, and it's really fast paced. But you're constantly moving and spinning around, shooting at stuff. It wasn't for the faint-hearted. It was quite a
mine was rigged.
Experience.
Mine was rigged on PSVR.
I love rigs.
I remember running out. I ran out. I'd jump off. I'd like run up this ramp. Jumped off. Didn't realize it was like a massive drop, and I was like, "Oh!" That was the first time I experienced it. I was like, of like being sick because I'd already played. I got VR when it first came out, the PlayStation 1, and
so
I've
funnily enough,
that just set me off. That was it.
The like most motion sick I think I've been in VR is when I was trying it out for like one of the first times with one of my friends VR, and he had Elite Dangerous VR set up, and I was like looking at one of the ships, and he has the controller, and he just flipped me upside down whilst I was in the headset, and I was immediately just like, no, I can't deal with it.
The weird thing is, though, is like what often in games, the comfort settings are reduced motion blur and like snap movement, and I can't do that. I can't do the snap movement. So the first thing I do in the game is turn the snap movement off and put smooth turning on. And if there's any like shadowing around the edges, I'll remove it. But according to the games, like that's the less comfortable option. Let's more people get less motion sickness with snap turning and shadows. But I'm the opposite. I find like I've got to have smooth turning.
you say that, and it's the thing we have as well. So like this kind of base stat you have when you're setting when you load into the game is snap rotation, because it's again like you like it's recommended that's like the most comfortable for people. But I feel like every like especially the last we've done so many game conventions this year. Everyone pretty much about 8 out of 10 people want to change it to smooth rotation, even though if they've not done VR before. Because I think what it is, the snap rotation, the thing that even if it doesn't make them feel nauseous, it disorientates them because they snap and they're like, I don't know where I am now, because it's like they've been teleported.
Especially with someone who's new, who might accidentally turn themselves around. They'll like go to pick up a ball, accidentally turn themselves like 160 degrees around and not know what they're doing anymore. And so it's that like constant flicking around that I've seen where people have like, I know why they're doing it because they haven't really messed around with it before, but they'll like unintentionally basically put themselves in a blender.
So taking a step back a bit, we talked quite a lot about the actual development of the game, but what is the story of Skera and what's actually going on in the game and what are players doing?
Yeah, do you want me to do the elevator?
Yeah, do you want to do
I've done it so many times now.
synopsis?
I've got it like I could recite it in my sleep like a mantra. So the kind of story setting behind Skera VR is that you and your people live on this kind of planet that's dying, coming to the end of its age. Like most of the surface now engulfed with desert, most life kind of disappeared. And you've been sent by your people to kind of chase this rumor of like an ancient civilization that kind of seemingly kind of disappeared from the planet. And you come across this kind of dormant spire out in the desert on your travels. And when you kind of step across the threshold, the kind of dormant AI that resides within the tower captures you and imprisons you. And you strike a kind of a deal with this AI. And in exchange for, it helping you ascend through the tower and save your people, you need to help it regain control of the tower as you kind of ascend through it. And it's the main kind of person you interact with is this AI character who's kind of this, as Max put it, is this unwilling antagonist who's simultaneously wanting to work with you, but at the same time, it's kind of hardwired and programmed to treat you like a prisoner and an intruder. So you've kind of got this duality between it wanting to work with you, but then it also kind of being victim to its own programming of, you step into a room you're not supposed to be in because, you are a prisoner here. Then, security systems go on, things come out, attack you, you get trapped in the room, and this is the reason why you've got these obstacles you need to be able to overcome, like, puzzles, traps, mixture between the two. But I've told you obviously before we started the stream, but Skera is a Icelandic word meaning to cut or to sever. So the main mechanic in our game is the kind of guardian sword you get, which you use to kind of cut through meshes in order to be able to like solve puzzles and fight enemies as well. But it's kind of this core tool that you carry with you through the game. And obviously, as I said, as you go through, it's the idea that you'll get different versions of the kind of ways to use the sword, and you learn how to wield it. Because one of the big things, which I'm sure I probably told you, because I tell everyone when I kind of tell them about the game, is a lot of things we've seen in VR games with like sword combat. There's a lot of kind of like swinging your arms around wildly and kind of just like hacking, slashing, which like I can understand it's quite fun at first, but like the novelty runs off really quickly and it doesn't feel particularly clean or elegant. So obviously the way the sword is designed is like you have to cut it on the sharp edge. So it involves you having to now like turn your wrist as you're swinging the sword and aim it. But you have to be able to swing it fast enough to generate heat on the blade to be able to cut through meshes. And in that way, you have to essentially we're encouraging people to learn how to use the sword accurately. And obviously, if you're doing things like cutting a thing you can't cut or you don't swing it properly enough, it breaks the sword for a moment. So it's a way of kind of like encouraging people to, learn how to wield the sword is how we've kind of pitched it to people. But yeah.
I think that's cool. So like I said, some people might be embarrassed doing VR in public, but I think I was there at WSD swinging the sword full around, probably looking a bit silly wearing the headset, flailing my arms around.
No, you look awesome. I can tell you look awesome doing it.
But it's satisfying, isn't it, when you do it properly and swing around? I can't remember which game it was. There's some games I played. There's a few like After the Fall, and there's another game. I can't remember the name of it now. But it's like a roguelike one where you go in and you just basically go through waves of enemies until you die and then go back and start again. And you get different weapons. I'm trying to remember the name of it. But that one does have the more you swing the sword back, the more damage actually gets dealt. So if you're there just going like this and hit people, it doesn't do much damage. It's what, sorry?
Was it Dungeon Knight?
No, it's not Dungeon Knight. It's
because it
swords of
has the
Gargantua.
same sort of things that you're talking about,
Yeah.
where it's like roguelike, and they try to work in the like swinging mechanic. I think one of the things is that with a like RPG sort of setting that one has, doing like an extra 10 damage with a big swing, or like twisting your wrist around and doing like 2 damage 30 times in a second, it still works out better to do it that way. Whereas with what we've got going on, because each cut is so like decisive, you're like completely parting a piece of armor, or destroying an object in front of you, or like stopping a projectile from hitting you because you cut it before it hits you. Every like slice really matters, and so it sort of builds in that like instant feedback for it versus trying to like blend away at a health bar kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that kind of, like I say, encourages people to actually swing around and get immersed rather than just sort of. It's like people talking about the Wii in the chat and playing Wii games. There's always the thing when you first play like Wii tennis, you'll be able to do a full backswing and swing your tennis racket around, and after a while you realize you can just sit there and just like flick your wrist like that. Yeah. It does just as good a job, and then you're not really moving around so much.
I'm not playing tennis anymore.
Yeah. Right, we'll get to some questions in the chat in a bit, but we did talk about doing this earlier, so I'm going to do a little introduction to the next segment. If I'm on the right page. There we go. I'm just going to introduce we're going to do the Desert Island Games Room. So let's just bring them up. So here we go. This is the Desert Island Games Room. So to explain, we're going to get a pick from each of you as to what game you would put in a Desert Island Games Room. So you're trapped on a desert island. And it doesn't matter what console it's for. Let's just assume you have access to any console. But what games would you want to have with you if you were trapped on a desert island? So we'll go with Horace. You were interested in doing this, so we'll go with you first.
Yeah, I was very interested. Maybe because I could just talk about my favorite. But I think for me, because it's one that I revisit pretty much every year without fail, and every time they've remade it, played it, and it's a massive nostalgic thing for me. But Shadow of the Colossus, which was like,
nice.
I absolutely love that game. Yeah, absolutely. I literally started playing it 2 days ago. Max would know because I put up some screenshots on our Discord. I was like, oh, I'm playing Shadow of the Colossus again. But yeah, played that on PlayStation 2, played it when they remade it on PS3, and then got it on PS4. But absolutely love that game. It's because again, I'm not much of a Nintendo person, but it's kind of that same feeling that you got from like when I played like Legend of Zelda, the Breath of the Wild. It was kind of the idea. It's like you kind of just thrown into this very empty world, and Shadow of the Colossus, if you've played it before, is obviously you're kind of without much exposition. It's all very kind of storytelling. There's a lot of kind of nuanced stuff to it. You kind of left to a lot of speculation, and you to kind of come up with your own answers to it. But you're kind of thrown into this kind of empty, vast land, and your whole objective is kind of hunting down. Finding is like half the game, just finding and locating these colossi and then figuring out how to essentially find where their weak points are, stab them, kill them, and then you kind of repeat this process in order to kind of like bring back this girl that you brought to this land. And you obviously don't know what your relationship to her is, but it's just this kind of very hauntingly like empty but very beautiful game, and I absolutely love the music. And something just about the tone of it really struck a tone with me when I was younger.
I think the graphics of that game as well at the time. I mean, they're still impressive now, but on PS2 when that first came out, I was like, "Wow, this looks beautiful." It's a really good, like say, even just the bits where you're like scaling up the walls and stuff. When you then actually see the Colossuses come in, and how big they like, they don't even acknowledge you, really, do they? You just like climbing up. It's like these big like godlike creatures.
Yeah, it's just I love the puzzle elements of all of them, because obviously the puzzle is essentially how when you meet them, they all have their kind of like own arena, and it's like, oh, okay, how do these ones react? How are you supposed to be able to get on them? Where are their weak points? Like what their kind of mood sets are. And I remember playing it when I was younger, and like getting maybe 5, 6 of them, and then I came back to it like a year later, and I was older and much wiser. Someone should put up Everyone Goes Rapture. I didn't know that was on VR. I might have to try that out because I'm a big Jessica Curry fan.
No, I think he said would also work
just
great
saying,
in VR.
Oh, it's not. Oh, you got me
Yeah.
excited. You got me so excited. I really enjoy. I'm a big fan of Jessica Curry. She does some beautiful like choral writing. You got me very excited then. But it doesn't.
What was the? I think it's called. That was it. Because there's a couple of other games that remind me of Shadow Colossus. One was I don't know if it was the same team. It was kind of like a spiritual successor of it. It was Ico. Ico was what I can't.
Yeah,
remember
Ico again. Another one. I mean, that might have been my other one. I know I'm jumping the gun here. I might have put Icon as well because that was another one that I played as a kid. Absolutely fell in love with it because, like I said, I was a PlayStation. I'm a PlayStation person. I got all those consoles. Another one that I played as a kid. Couldn't get too far in, but I loved just playing the opening bit of the game. And then I came back wiser and older, and then like managed to make more progress in it when I wasn't a stupid child.
It's funny, isn't it? Some games you come back to and you find they're much easier, and other games you get back to and you think, "How the hell did I do this as a kid?" Because it's really hard.
Yeah, but yeah,
Depends.
that would be my if I'm just choosing one at the moment, Shadow of the Colossus.
And the other one I would that reminds me of that as well. Again, I don't know if it's the same studio or anything, but was the Last Guardian.
Yeah, it was. So I was a kid when I played the Shadow of the Colossus, and I remember when they did the remake, my mum was like, "Oh, I think they're doing another game, and it's going to be like the Last Guardian." And she told me about it, and then it got dead. The development died out, and it seemed to just sort of disappeared. And then like I think maybe 60. No, I was probably maybe I can't remember when it came out, 17. And then they announced it, and I was like, I almost was like just crying because I was like, no way, it's actually happening. Because I'd always wished that they'd like had did a remake of the Shadow of the Colossus and added in like all the colossi that didn't quite make it into the game because there's all these like, art pieces and things about like stuff in the game where like they were going to have more enemies in, but they never got it in. But yeah, Last Guardian, absolutely. Again, another really beautiful. Again, for me, it's like beautiful music. So it won me over immediately.
With any game as well.
I think I've still got the PlayStation 2 disc somewhere in this office. Like it's buried away somewhere, like with all the other stuff I've kept. But yeah, it's such a beautiful game. Like it's one of those things. Like you think, oh look, look, someone's compared it to Breath of the Wild. Yeah, just like beautiful open landscape. Obviously not as much stuff going on in the kind of the world outside of the Colossus, but still very hauntingly beautiful.
And being a big VR fan, whenever they remake a game or bring something back, I was like, just do it again, but in VR. That would be great. I think playing Resident Evil 4 in VR was absolutely brilliant. So whenever they go, oh, we're going to do a remaster or a remake of this, I'm like, please bring out in VR as well. Just remake a whole bunch of old PS2 games, but give us a VR option or whack it in VR, especially like horror stuff. I think horror VR, like Resident Evil.
You told me they're doing a new Alien game, so I'm going to be keeping an eye. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that.
That looks crazy.
Does look great. I think the thing as well, you got to have a mixture of stuff. I mean, I think with VR as well, some of the VR games you get tend to be like fairly short.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that sometimes because so many games are huge experiences. They get quite bloated. And then I think like I get to a point where like, I just want to finish this game now. I've got the time invested in it. I don't want to like drop the game halfway through. But at the same time, I want to finish it so I can go play something else because I've got a backlog of games I want to play. So yes, it's nice to have like, I'll often like play a game with a big long campaign and then do a VR game and then do another big long campaign and jump back and forth between. Cool. So Max, what game are you taking to the Desert Island Games room?
So I've been thinking about it as you've been talking about it. I think it's one of the things of I guess you gotta go with something that has quite a good campaign to it, a long experience to go with. Because if you go with something too short, and that's the only thing you've got, I will say that probably for me, more recent as a game, but Breath of the Wild was one of the ones that, as soon as I started playing it, that ate my like month's worth of life in just one go. I could not stop playing that when it came out. I literally started doing those shrines and did not stop until I had done every single shrine.
Have you done DLC as well?
Yeah. So the DLC with the Champion's Ballad. That's it, isn't it? Yeah. I literally played basically as much as I could out of Breath of the Wild. And I could easily see myself doing it again. I think you know, I've always liked puzzles, and I liked the variety and interest that you have with that. I also liked how there's so much like, I guess, meta ways to play certain shrines. Like you can bring in metal weapons, and then the shrines that have like electricity, you can daisy chain weapons along so that you can pass the electrical current without having to mess around with the puzzle itself. Or if you know where there's like a fire sword and there's like a puzzle that deals with ice, you can bring that in to sort of give you a bit of an edge. I also really like the art style and the environment in Breath of the Wild. You know, being able to sort of sit on your horse and just sort of dash off into the winds. It's a really chill experience. I think, you know, a lot of games are quite like intense at the moment that I play. Like I've just started playing Elden Ring for the first time, and I'm enjoying getting my ass handed to me a lot, but in the same way, it's you know, something where like if that does happen, I need to go play a different game to sort of chill for a while, because I don't want to have the like I'm gonna go to sleep having that boss murder me in my sleep.
Cool. So
Yeah,
I'll add
that's
those
a
to a
lot.
tracker. I'll be interested to see how this pans out. So I've basically got, whenever I've asked anyone, I'm adding it to a big list. I'm making that the game and the system. So I'll see what the most popular systems are. I'll probably have some data eventually, and I'll put it in a pie chart or something. Who knows? So thank you for contributing to that, and I'll see where it ends up. We've got some time for a few questions, so we'll have a look at the chat. We've got a few starred questions here, so we'll go through some questions that the chat have put in. So cool, bonuses on that. So yeah, will it be compatible with original PSVR? Or I think we've actually covered that one, haven't we? Or Oculus Quest 2. Yeah, so it's give those problems. So then we've got a question now. How do you decide the draw distances? As a photographer, I work with very shadow DOF f1.2 is my favorite. I've noticed a few PS5 VR2 games also have very shallow depth of field.
So I guess one of the things is that for the way that we're designing our levels at the moment, they're quite they're like room by room. So draw distance doesn't really factor in as much for what we're working on right now. Also, VR is sort of a different sort of bag of cats, I guess, because you've got some visual effects are useful to have, some visual effects you don't really want to have. With like depth of field, you like to be able to read text from quite far away, so you don't want that depth of field to be so heavy that it like stops you from reading things from far away. And if you've got really, really big environments, you usually have to sort of tone them down quite a lot for VR, because you're already running with like a massive performance hit by just doing VR in the first place. So you might need to use depth of field to sort of smoothen out some of the like rougher topology that you've got in the backgrounds. But it's not something that we've had to really deal with too much on our project so far.
Cool, thank you for that. And then we've got what is your favorite VR controller so far?
Ooh. So I have to say, I really like the PlayStation VR controllers. I think it was the Knuckles controllers I found were quite interesting when they came out. But I found that if you've got certain types of games like H3 VR, Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades, if you're trying to like work the action on a gun, you'll find yourself like knocking the knuckles on the back of your hands quite a lot.
Yeah.
And a lot of the controllers have some degree of like funk somewhere that'll like mess around with it. And the PlayStation VR controllers had the least amount of like interference as far as I found with playing games. And so that was the thing that I personally liked quite a lot.
And then I assume VR is more difficult to develop, not just the head and arm movement, having to load items and obstacles and NPCs that are off screen. How have you is that accurate to say, or how have you found it? Is it
so
VR make it harder?
So VR doesn't really make the loading of like items and NPCs off screen, particularly for us, too difficult. A lot of the issue with VR comes from having to work with having an actual human being inside your game. So there are so many things that we've like come across as we've developed that I've just never really thought of. Like, one that was really hard to get around was that a human can swing a sword faster than the frame rate of the game. So you have to account for someone who can basically move at light speed in your game. And for a game that deals with swords is really difficult. If you look at games like Broken Edge, that has like a sword fighting mechanic. And the thing is that if you swing your sword too quickly, you'll phase through the other person's sword and then they'll stab you in the face. And if you swing it too slowly, they'll just work around your sword and kill you. So you have to find out the right speed to move so that the game doesn't cause an issue, but you're also faster than the other guy. So there are a lot of issues that can arise from just having a person in your game. I had one where people would just walk through walls because they'd walk right up to the wall in the game and then in real life just walk through the wall.
Okay. Yes.
So it's stuff you don't really have to deal with. I guess the closest comparison is like when you build server-based games where you have like client-side sort of things that run. And if you do anything client-side, people can hack and sort of adjust it to give them an advantage. So you have to do everything on the client, but you can't outsource a lot of the movement that a person does in that game to anywhere else. You've just got to take it as it is. And so that's one of the really hard things to do with VR.
And does like the actual character model actually exist in the room, or is it like the camera's there and you just have like the limbs that you can see? So you're not actually building a character model.
So it depends on what the game is. For us right now, we've just got hands and helmets, and that's because the hardware itself tracks those individual things. So that's stuff I can work with. Usually when you've got a body, if you don't have additional hardware, you've kind of got to interpolate what it should be doing, which always leads to like your elbows going kind of funky, or you know, how do you know what direction your body is supposed to face? And that requires a lot of like extra processing to figure out what's supposed to be happening. That, you know, for us right now, it's kind of like, it's nice to have, but not essential to the game. So it's just not something we've really been.
I've noticed some games that you'll get ones where they've just made the arm models, or, you know, you're picking up swords or something, and they've given a shadow to the objects. So when you look at the floor, you'll see the shadow of the swords or the shadow of the arms, but there's no shadow for the rest of the body because the rest of the body didn't exist. So some people think if we've gone to do that. Other ones I've done is like, you can see, even though your body technically doesn't exist in the game, it still casts a shadow. So they've kind of got that in there. But I always found that funny when I'm playing a game. Look down, you see floating arms. I think actually I'm just a floating arm. We've got a couple more questions here from Dave Newland again. We've got a question with. Hang on, he's gone. Okay.
Sorry, Dave.
Sorry. Okay. Which restrictions have you faced, if any, that have taken away from your true vision of this project?
So I would say one of the things that I was working on back when it was like my third year project is I wanted to experiment with like non-Euclidean sort of design elements. So the idea of having portals or like optical illusions. And I basically had to just throw that out the window at the time because in VR, you cannot fool people very easily. If something is flat and you use a normal map, they'll just see it as being flat because they've got binocular vision. If you have any kind of non-Euclidean effect, it usually is based on tricking how the camera works. But now you've got two cameras. So anytime you do an effect, you have to do it twice for two different perspectives. So then you have to basically render different things to each eye, which depending on the type of rendering that your game engine is doing is either possible or not, just like at a base level. And so for us, I got some things working, but generally just had to throw it out the window because it wasn't really adding too much to the game at the time and was taking up so much of my time to try and work out, and it just wasn't giving me a lot back. So that's one of the things that we've had as a restriction.
And we've got one more last question we've got from David here. We've got, I'd love to hear about a VR dev kit. That must be awesome. What a great way to push the tech. So you've given us quite a bit of insight there already, but any other bits about the actual VR dev kit that you use?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on like what you're interested in terms of like either hardware sort of sides of things or like the software sides of things. For what we're using is Unity and the Open VR sort of plugin for it, which is it gives you the basic stuff to make someone exist, but it doesn't handle a lot of the quality of life kind of stuff that you need. So, for example, people walking through walls is something that is based to like OpenXR. It's something I've had to program in and makes it so that people can't walk through walls. Adding physics to your controllers and then controlling like the weight and the speed and stuff like that is another thing that like doesn't come as base. So it's a very bare bones sort of kit for it. When it comes to like hardware side of things, we've been very lucky that we've had a lot of support from our university. So the Quest 2s that we've been using recently for like our exhibitions have all been provided by the university. I've had my own HTC Vive that I bought, and I've tested out some of the stuff on. But VR kit, even now, is still quite expensive to deal with.
Yeah.
And so it's one of the things of, as you were mentioning with the like Steam plugin for PlayStation VR, I would really like to give that a try. But I would also then need to go buy a PlayStation headset if I needed to test that out.
Well, I wanted to get the PSVR 2 headset, but I was like, I got to spread the cost because the headset costs the same as the console. So it's like, well, I'll buy a PlayStation 5 first, then I'll leave it a while, and then I'll get the PSVR 2. And then I went to WSD, played a bunch of indie games, and went, I need a Steam Deck now. So that's been put on the back burner. So I'll eventually get one. And now, if they've now not opened up like the Steam library as well, even more reason to get it, I think. Sounds like a very interesting area to work in with game development. And the thing you said there, I thought was quite interesting, where you've got somebody playing the game and walking forward, but then physically moving forward in their space. And you've got to try and think about that. And it's trying to anticipate what people are going to do in an environment where you can be immersed and interact with things. And it's, so there's some really cool stuff that's come out in VR over the past. And it's mad to think how much has come along as well.
Yeah.
If you look at, we had a guest on recently, he worked on some of the original sort of VR tech back in like the 90s. It didn't really take off then because it's very clunky and big stuff. There was a lot of stuff they were working on then, and to see it have a resurgence now and work a lot better, it's mad. I think anyone who's not tried VR, you got to try it. And like I said, when you watch a video of a VR game, it doesn't do it justice. You have to experience it in the field of view all around you.
Yeah, but the exciting thing
it's like
sorry, go on.
Sorry, Horace, carry on.
You want me? All right, I'll go first then. We feel like we're at a really good time where it's kind of like it's just getting into that kind of era of VR games moving out from just being a niche and it actually being like a console that you can play, and all these actually really interesting games are coming out. And like a lot of indie, especially like for us, like with not many indie kind of like developers doing VR games. Like a lot of the game conventions we go to, we're lucky if we maybe see one other like small VR team. It's quite exciting to be on the front end. It's nice to see people getting excited about it as well. So hopefully we'll be able to put a good stamp and show people that it's a viable thing. Indie VR games aren't just niche; they are some like really interesting experience you can do.
Yeah. Cool, excellent stuff. Well, thanks very much for joining us this evening. Is there what's the best place to follow you sort of on socials? You mentioned you've got a Twitter account. Is there anywhere else where anyone can keep up to date with the game news?
If you want the most up-to-date information, Twitter is the one that we have most of our stuff going on. I would keep an eye on Steam because we'll be updating our stuff on there soon. We'll have a new trailer, our new graphics put in that trailer, as well as a free demo, which people can try and buy before they buy. Because with VR, we've already talked a bit about the fact that like you got to buy a headset. Sometimes you've got to buy a console or a PC to go with it. It's already quite an investment to go into. So having the ability to try a game and go, that makes me feel really ill, or I really love this, I think I can play this for hours, is quite important. And so that's why we're going for that free demo. And it should be pretty much the same kind of experience that we've been showing off at the exhibitions.
Just that fancy new level layout, which it's looking good.
Nice. Well, good luck with the project, and I hope it's successful. And people get to add that. Go and add it to your wish list on Steam if you haven't already, and keep an eye out for the game as it's getting announced. Right, thanks everyone for watching. If you have found us somewhere on the internet, please do consider giving us a subscribe, because it helps us out a ton. And please give us a little like on the video too to let us know you've been here. And thanks for watching. We'll be back next. What's next? Monday. Will be
next Monday. Modcons
on Monday, and we are going to be joined by Mags, middle-aged gamer guy, and me and Ollie will be talking about the recent event we did at Timeless. So do join us on Monday. We'll be doing Modcons, and we're talking modern gaming and a bit of a feature on Timeless as well, retrospective, and how we got on that event. So thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time. Do my weird hand.
Bye.
Bye.
There you go.